Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Scholarship in Practice series today on the innovations in research and practice in early childhood. And so we're going to spend the next hour really talking about really some interesting and great things that are happening at UNLV in early childhood research and how you can be involved or how to share your ideas with us. So I'm Dr. Wegler's Ward, and I'm part of the College of Education, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Claire Treadwell to get us moving along for today.
I'm Dr. Claire Treadwell. I'm the director over at the UNLV CSUN Preschool, Lynn Bennett Early Childhood Education Center. Today, I'll just go over the agenda. We're going to look at the impact of innovative research in early childhood, and I will show you 3 research projects. One is our Parent Empowerment Survey, Instrument Development, and that's with Dr. Kim and Dr. Chen. And the second, a mixed method study on the professional resilience of preschool teachers in their pursuit of equity and quality for their students during COVID-19 with Dr. Liu, and family center practices for children with disabilities during distance learning and beyond with Dr. Wegler's Ward. Dr. Stafford will be joining us later to invite a discussion and questions on the possibilities or the importance of research and anything that you have about young children and their families and the professionals and communities that we work within. So just a little bit about the Lynn Bennett Early Childhood Education Center. We have a very strong mission at our school for a model early childhood demonstration program for the state of Nevada with a focus in research and professional training. The center itself serves approximately 200 children ages 6 weeks to 5 years, and our families consists of faculty, staff at the university, students, undergraduate and graduate, and community members in Las Vegas. We have 20 full-time staff members, and throughout the year, we will have 60 to 70 UNLV students working in the school. Our program is fully inclusive. And we have special interagency agreements with Clark County School District and Part C early intervention programs that are on site full time. So just a little bit of background on the summary of the research activities that have been completed or conducted here since 2004. So you can see that we are using studies that have the topics of special education. If you look over to the slide with the topics, you can see the different areas that we have worked on. That studies have been done through early childhood, teaching and learning, psychology, physical therapy, and we even look at programs related to public health, nutrition, or dentistry. And most of the studies that we have done here, 50% anyway, have been conducted through doctoral studies with their primary faculty member with them, and the majority are focused on preschool ages 3 to 5 thus far. So you can see the slide there. So how can we support your research activities, recruitment efforts, and your course activities? So we have a beautiful site here with classroom outdoor spaces, a lab, workspaces. We're able to provide research focus groups, assessment tools that are needed, and just to give tours and information overall. We even work with faculty and community agencies to come and speak to your groups and your students. So we want you to look at how we work to support your research by looking at the research approval process, which you'll get these links, and that we have a council that will help guide you and answer any questions you may have related to the studies that you would like to conduct here at the site. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kim now.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Claire. So we are recipient of this research program, and Dr. Ching Chan here and me and Dr. Catherine Feather in Counselor Education program in College of Education. We studied that parent empowerment. Parent empowerment study comprised of 2 sub-studies. One is about initial parent empowerment survey development, and the other is about that listening to parent experience about empowerment. So Dr. Chan will talk about the first study, the initial parent empowerment survey development. So I will pass to Dr. Chan to talk about it.
Hi, my name is Qingchen Chen, and yeah, I will briefly summarize the skill development process and our study development process and our study current status and the future step. And I know, instrument development is a very lengthy and very long process, and we really appreciate preschool, especially Claire and Jenna, being so supportive throughout this process. We could not make it move forward without their support. So first of all, our research reviewed the parent empowerment literature and came up with the parent empowerment conceptual model. And this model specifically includes two domains. And one domain is personal empowerment, and the other domain is community empowerment. So next, we developed the important construct under each domain. And for the personal empowerment domain, we came up with 4 constructs, which includes sense of meaning, competence, self-determination, and consciousness. And for the other domain, the community empowerment domain, we included 2 constructs, community belonging and the community participation. So next, for each construct, we then develop its operational definition. And later, based on its operational definition, we put together the initial item pool for each construct. And we want to make sure our items, which we develop, are able to capture the content, especially the construct, so we are able to measure parent empowerment. So for example, we developed 11 items for the construct of sense of meaning, 7 items for competence, 11 items for self-determination, and for the community participation is 27 items. So in total, we developed 86 items and with 6 constructs and 2 domains for the parent empowerment survey. So next, we run the focus group with parents to help us refine those items. So, the preschool provide a very good being so supportive to our study, help us to reach out to the parents. So we are able to run the focus group and listen to those parents' voice. So during the parent focus group, we first introduce our parent empowerment conceptual model to those parents and ask parents to review our initial item pool. They really provided us very valuable feedback. Especially, for example, some of the items they feel, so difficult to understand, or maybe they are not relevant to the construct, or some of the items they feel so confused, or maybe some of the items they feel redundant with the other items. So after running the parent focus group, our research team met and revised the item pool based on those parents' feedback. Later, we send out for the content experts review. So we identify 5 content experts and invite them to review our initial parent empowerment survey. And so far, we received 2 experts' feedback. So it's still in the process. We are still waiting for the other 1 more expert's feedback. So then we can finalize our pilot test. So after the expert review, we will revise the item again and move to our next step to send out for the pilot test. And for the pilot test, we plan to recruit 30 to 45 parents for our pilot study. And, we need a preschool, their support again. Yeah. So after the pilot test, we plan to implement a parent empowerment program and assess this program by using our parent empowerment survey in order to validate the scale's reliability and validity. And recently, we are very lucky to collaborate with the faculty from College of Science, and also we partner with the CCSD Family Engagement Department, and we just recently submitted a faculty opportunity grant proposal. So we plan to run a pilot STEAM parent empowerment program with a total, so this program will be a total 4 sessions and 60 minutes for each session. And this program, what we design, we plan, they will be very different from many traditional parent education program because of its focus on empowerment and guides parents to take personal and collective action. And we plan to use our parent empowerment survey to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And then I'm going to pass to Dr. Kim to kind of share more details about this program.
Yes, thanks to the Dr. Chan, and talks about that initial parent empowerment survey development. I think that this just kind of initial development, it's helped us to move the next step to think about parent empowerment and intervention, and using this survey and to assess that or evaluate the effectiveness of the parent empowerment, that intervention. So we really appreciate that research grant to help us to move to next step to think about that intervention and that evaluation, the tool with that survey. So along with that initial parent empowerment survey development, we really wanted to listen to parents' experience in preschool about empowerment. So that's just kind of with that purpose, we conducted the focus group, and we recruited the parent through the UNLV preschool, and supported by the director of the preschool, that Claire. So, and we just had 7 parents in the focus group, and with that 7 the participants that just kind of listen to their experience and their perspective about the empowerment. So, and after that, through the focus group, and there were 4 themes just kind of came out from that, and parent discussion about the empowerment. So, and first theme was collaborative participant. So, parents just a little shared, and when they felt that some of the equal and the collaborative partnership with the preschool, they felt the empowerment. So that means that just kind of when they had positive interaction with the school staff, and they felt that there was some just kind of a two-way open communication, and they felt that the relationship is very just kind of built by trust too. And then they just kind of felt that staff and the preschool, it is so accessible and available to them, and they felt empowered. So those kind of the partnership, just kind of that promote that sense of the empowerment. Another theme is school culture. I know that school culture is so broad term, and to the parent, they just kind of little mention that. So they just kind of felt some of the meaningful, some connection and positive, just kind of climate. They just felt in the preschool when they come to the school, and they felt the valuable, and that they felt welcoming. And when they felt those kind of that, the climate, that kind of that positive, that some feeling and positive things from the school, and that through that kind of over the culture, parents just kind of shared that the empowerment that they experience it. So that is the school culture and cultural awareness. Because that luckily we have a very diverse the participant from the so many different backgrounds. So they just a little mention the importance of the awareness about the culture, and then they shared intentionally. They try to a little connect their children to just kind of some of the diversity and different culture, and they wanted to just kind of that pass along some of the cultural heritage and ethnic culture to their children. So their effort to just kind of increase the awareness, cultural awareness for their children, exactly just kind of the connected to and associate with that sense of the empowerment. And also they just kind of mentioned that when they come to the school, they just kind of little felt that some of the diversity and they're honoring diversity, or just kind of some of the respect to and that diversity and different culture. Parents told me that empowerment, they just kind of so appreciated, and they felt that they just kind of some of the empowerment, they just kind of experienced the kind of the cultural awareness from the preschool. And lastly, the community empowerment. Again, this is a little broad term, but they just kind of mentioned the sense of community, not just kind of only with the school and also with the community and neighborhood, and also with the other parents. They just already mentioned that they can be a little empowering parent and just kind of little just can help other parents feel empowered. And also they a little mentioned the importance of the collective action to help other parents to feel empowered, or just kind of help just other parents to advocate for their children. So they mentioned that just kind of some collective action, and then some of the networks with other parents, some of the sense of community in the school and neighborhood. Those experiences, they just kind of, that's the empowerment we can say. So we can just kind of call. So that's just kind of themes just kind of that came from the parent voice and parent just kind of the perspectives. Yeah. Right now, yeah, thank you. Just kind of that study.
Dr. Liu?
Thank you. So our study is focusing on preschool teachers of color and how they provide equitable education for kids of color, especially during the quarantine time. But our research also goes beyond the pandemic quarantine time. And so just a little bit about the background. This is a collaborative research across different departments in UNLV and across a couple of different institutions in the United States. So we started this understanding that children of color experience inequitable treatment that leads all the way to elementary school, to middle school and high school, so that really make the school to prison pipeline into the childhood, the early childhood stage, into the early childhood classroom as well as the playground. And so specifically, there is a lack of access to quality of education for kids of color, and they also experience intergenerational violence that happens between the peers and then teachers to the kids of color. And there is a play inequity and also lack of preschool teachers of color. Nationwide, the preschool teaching force is about 62% white. It's a little bit higher diversity than the general K-12 education, based on the assumption that, preschool education is very low payment. And again, that means educators of color are placed in the very bottom level of the social status and payment and so on and so forth. But research told us that preschool teachers of color, they are able to provide equitable and inclusive education for children of color. And so that's why we want to take a very in-depth approach to see why preschool teachers of color are teaching for educational equity, what motivated them to conduct anti-racist and decriminalizing practices. And we are also interested in specifically what they actually do in the classroom. So the theoretical frameworks that informed our research, including two specifically. The first one is critical race theory. So specifically, we take critical race theory to enable us to understand that racism is very normal and racism happens within the educational system, including classrooms and the playgrounds. And another important element of critical race theory that enabled our study is the counter-narrative, which means the experiences and voices and practices of people of color is legitimate and appropriate and critical to understanding, analyzing, and teaching about racial subordination. The next. And so in order to enable us to do this research, we want the preschool teachers of color be able to articulate their experiences, which is primarily narrative and reflective, but at the same time, we want them to be able to demonstrate. Basically, we want to see what they actually do in the classroom rather than completely based on what they say. So we integrated critical reflection for transformative learning and critical race theory as our theoretical framing. And then we used the critical counter-narrative as a transformative methodology. A group of colleagues, we worked together to publish this piece a couple of years ago. So this methodology unifies critical race theory as a model of inquiry, and then critical reflection and generativity for transformative action as a model of praxis. So that means as a researcher, we not only need to understand to reveal the facts, but also our research should be enhanced and focusing on action, a kind of transformative praxis. And then we have a specific goal, which is educational equity. So this methodology fit perfectly for our needs in this specific context. This is a critical reflection for transformative learning that we use specific to guide our data collection and data analysis. So again, we want to understand the assumptions of those preschool teachers of color in terms of educational systems and practices, as well as their own pedagogical backgrounds. And then, but we want to move, from the assumption analysis all the way toward their transformative actions that they actually integrate in the classroom. So next. And now I'm going to share a little bit of the findings. I would like to highlight that this is a longitudinal study, which is very important in educational research because we should take our participants, their life, their voices seriously. We need to respect their life and the stories. And so in order to understand that life stories and the context, we need to spend a relatively good amount of time. So we have been with these participants for the past 3 years, and we put this study in 2 stages. The first stage is really focusing on their narrative, their life stories to really identify and understand what motivates them to teach the way they teach. So that means we want to understand their pedagogical origins that is based on their funds of knowledge. That's the first stage that we presented at AERA last year. And then the second stage is after we understand, okay, they have this pedagogical understanding and they have this life story that life experiences that motivate them to do the type of anti-racist teaching they want to do. And then we want to say, hey, how those practices that can actually happen on a daily basis. So what we're gonna share here is I would like to invite Claire to share their pedagogical motivation and the funds of knowledge that grounded their pedagogical beliefs. And then I will give a very brief sharing about what we found about their practices on a daily basis. Claire, please go ahead.
Okay, hi. So here at this first stage was really about, as Katrina was saying, understanding what they bring into the classroom, into the school setting, their knowledge base, and the comfort level they have to share. We are looking at how they set up their classrooms, how they build this knowledge base to overcome these barriers, and really with the goal of supporting the diversity and the treatment of the children that they serve through positive relationships. So, training with positive relationships, the bonds that they're forming, and the curriculum and environment that you can see here, setting the stage for bringing diversity and recognition into the classroom. These our teachers of color we're forming them as leaders, transformation to leadership in this field. And we were talking about this, about how we distribute this practice of transformative leadership into our schools and into our communities.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Claire. So the first stage, we discovered that their life experiences, especially their racialized experiences, really set up the ground for them to implement anti-racist teaching. Again and again, we hear from the participants saying, because I experienced this, and I don't want children like me to have this perpetuated experience. And so they, no matter they're African American teachers or Asian American teachers or Latina teachers, they all experience different types of racism in this in our society that are specifically targeting different groups of people of color. So those are the fundamental motivation and the pedagogical grounds for them to do this type of work they do. So now we move toward their daily practices. They're wonderful stories to hear. Because of the time, I'm only going to share briefly the themes we discovered through ethnographic observations in the field. So I'm going to report to you 4 themes. The first one is modeling inclusivity. As Claire shared, and also the pictures you see, the modeling inclusivity happens through diverse readings. You can see they selectively, put into the classroom. The pictures demonstrating different type of people, different culture, different foods. And then there is a typical all about me poster every year when the kids come in. So this type of practices enable the children in the classroom to see themselves as a normal person, no matter what skin color or language they speak, right? And so this equitable attention and the time devoted to different kids of color, a modeling of inclusivity. So this inclusivity impact other kids in the classroom as well. So remember when I mentioned this intergenerational racism means when teachers model racial discrimination and through their action in the classroom, those behaviors and the concepts will be internalized by children in the classroom, especially the children from the dominant group. So they become the dominant peers against their kids of color. They feel a sense of privilege that they can police, they can criticize, they can push kids of color around. So modeling inclusivity is very important to dismantle that intergenerational racism and the lineage and legacy. The second theme is providing physical proximity and care. Research showing that a way of criminalizing kids is by punishing them, right? Sending them to the corner and then pushing them around, sending them to the principal's office. But these teachers we observed, they providing a lot of physical care, and especially when the kids need that emotional support during difficult times in the classroom. So the teachers constantly hug them, hold them onto their laps, especially when they're crying, and treating them that as normal human beings. That's very important. And this type of treatment have heartfelt outcomes. So I just want to share a moment that one of the teacher, I call her Haeyong, who is an Asian American teacher. And so this kid at the one time was having a little emotional difficulty, and when he was having a little bit argument with his peer. He's a little African American boy, and so he, when he was upset, he was sitting onto the floor. So the teacher sit on the floor with him and then hold him onto her lap and hugged him and calming him down, saying, let's see what can we do and what can we do have for fun. And then at that moment, this little black boy noticed that Miss Haeyong has a Band-Aid on her finger. So this little boy immediately said, oh, what happened to your finger? And Miss Haeyong said, oh, I just was careless. I got a little cut on my finger. And this little boy hold the finger and asked the teacher, oh, was it painful? And so you can see he is a normal child who is able to express care, who is able to be observant under that type of caring environment. So this care and the love is reciprocal. And the third theme I want to share is acknowledging and rewarding excellence. So that means teachers of color are able to recognize and reward the progresses and achievements of children of color when they make, rather than ignore it and being blind toward it. And I have a beautiful story for here as well. And so I called Tiana, who is an African-American teacher in this context. And there was this African-American boy and then a group of children doing artwork. And so during this table, and this African-American boy was using a big the plate to hold the painting, the paints. And he was a little bit hesitating, and then he keep pulling the paints into the plate, and then mix the color, and then he will move to the sink to wash it away. I was thinking, oh, that's good. He washed it. And then he came back and then put different paint in the plate and then mix them again without really using it, and then going to wash it again. Back and forth, and Miss Tiana was watching him. And then she started to scaffold, saying, okay, would you like to paint on the left corner or right corner? And then bottom left, or, and the top corner. And then the child was following him. And then after the child finally, met some dots and, and some shapes. And then the teacher asked him, would you like me to name your painting? That looks very good. And so the child said, this is called the skyline. Okay. And so after this observation, I asked Ms. Tiana, I said, well, tell me what's your thinking behind it? Because it looks like this child was hesitating to paint, and he might have wasted a lot of paint, right? And so Tiana said, oh, I noticed that because he was very hesitating. He never really did some painting before. And today he was even willing to sit down and try the different paintings. So I feel very excited about this progress. And that's why I don't want to prevent him from doing it by criticizing him wasting the paint. Definitely, I will mention that in the future about, wasting and the watering and the water and stuff. But at this moment, the focus is on him to actually try it, to make the progress and breaking this barrier of fear. So you can see acknowledging and rewarding the excellence made a huge impact on this kid, and he became more comfortable to doing artwork that he never felt this comfortable level before. The last one I wanna share is enacting equitable treatment during conflicts. This is very, very important, and I put it at the end to share because the school to prison pipeline, starting from the preschool, starting from discipline disparity. We have a lot of data in elementary, middle, high school. Disparity happens. We understand what does that mean. Kids of color are disciplined is 3 times higher and more than their dominant group of peers, even though they are doing exactly the same thing. So the discipline disparity cause a huge amount of harm to the kids, right? And it directly impact the discipline, the school to prison pipeline practice. So here, what I'm going to share is what they disrupt, how teachers of color disrupt this discipline disparity by, during the conflict time, by listening to both sides and supporting both sides during conflict time using the appropriate language. And again, this is the modeling of equitable treatment so that dominant groups of kids are not going to acting as a proxy for teachers to discipline their peers. So do I have 1 minute to share the scenario or okay. So the scenario is there are 2 boys. They're playing around. This is in Ms. Hayon's classroom. So there are a bunch of the name tags that put on the ring, right? On the ring. So the kids' names are on the name tags. So then the 2 boys, I believe, according to the observation and later on asking the teacher, this is an Asian American boy. And he and another boy, they were trying to both want to get this name tag ring. So they're pulling to, and pushing around. And so the teacher, instead of punish one side and assuming who is the troublemaker of this incident, and she sit down with each of them on her lap on one side, and first is listen to both sides, what happened. And what's your story, and then listen to the other side, and then enable them to use the language is saying, okay, if you wanna play this first, how many minutes, right? So she supported the kids to say, I want to play it too, but how many minutes you want to play at this point? So she helped the kids to actually say that, and then they are able to solve this conflict using their own language by using a timer. By the time is off, they actually happily give this name tag ring to the other part of this group. So at this point, that means the other child from a dominant group and stopped, was not blaming the other kids, saying you are holding it or criticizing from using inappropriate language. So these themes are emerging really from our observations and also informed by our theoretical understanding about what criminalizing and dehumanizing children of color looks like in the classroom. And then what they're doing is actually counteracting and dismantling that type of intergenerational socialization and the legacy that have been going on for a long time that perpetuate the experiences of kids of color that become painful and they become a source of spiritual murder for them to grow up. So we really appreciate this opportunity to do this research, and we're continuing this, and hopefully we'll publish a couple of articles based on the 2 presentations we already done. Thank you so much for your attention.
So I'll continue, and to let you know too, our time together too is this. I'm going to present the one last research study that we're going to talk about today. And as I'm talking, if you want to put questions or thoughts or comments into the Q&A, you're more than welcome to. And then we'll move on to some discussion. So the study that I'm going to talk about today is something that actually began during COVID when we were in kind of a restricted setting with, children being at home and distance learning. And then it continued afterwards, although here in Nevada, it took us, a good 2 years to move back into what, more traditional, back into in-person settings. So we had a little bit of time and saw that transition. We really focused on family-centered practices and supporting professionals in doing that, particularly with children with disabilities. Families in particular might feel some isolation, have trouble connecting with the professionals that they're working with, and in finding inclusive settings where they really feel, similar to my colleagues talking today, really feel like a sense of belonging and empowerment and inclusion, where they also feel like their children will be welcomed as well. And so this study really focused on supporting professional skills in implementing family-centered practices, specifically for children with disabilities. And this really started with thinking about what are traditional ways that we do professional development and learning for our early childhood professionals, and what works and what doesn't work, and to try something new and innovative. And so not only because we were kind of in a virtual context during the pandemic, and people were getting more comfortable learning in different ways and using technology, we kind of capitalize and leverage on that, as well as looking at the, really established research that says that to really have changes in our beliefs that drive our practices that then can impact child and family outcomes, we really need to look at some long-term professional development. So instead of just a one-time session, we need to do longer sessions over time. And we also need to include some individual accountability and action planning and coaching to be more effective. So this project was really designed to incorporate all of those best practices in a way that we can do and to meet the needs as a group and also individually. So we had 2 cohorts of amazing early childhood teachers that spanned across different early childhood settings, including childcare settings, Title I programs, some of our early child special education programs at the district level, and in urban settings and rural settings and all over the state. So we had a nice group of good professionals. In general, our professionals were more advanced professionals, so they had been working a little bit in the field and were really wanting to really focus specifically on their family practices at this time. We created a kind of a multimodal system where we did multiple things. So one, we had monthly learning sessions together where we met together on Zoom, similar to what we're doing today together, to work on specific topics that we went through. They were also provided with materials and resources. So everyone was provided with 2 books about family coaching and also about addressing challenging behaviors and social emotional development in early childhood, which was a selected focus of the groups. So they were provided with those physical materials as well as additional virtual resources that we used and focused across our monthly learning sessions, which we did across 6 months. So we did those learnings together, and then we also did individual action planning and coaching. So everyone in the cohorts developed their own individual goals to accomplish over the 6-month time. They met with one of our team members to really work through the goals, check on problem solving, and then discuss ways to work on those goals in between our meetings. So during that time, for example, we had professionals that were really working on really connecting. We had a family that was really struggling with a child who was having select mutism in the classroom. And so we really had targeted supports for that professional to support that family. We really pulled really individual strategies, one, teaching strategies to help support that child, parent coaching strategies to help that parent support their child at school, transitioning from school to home and at home, and then also additional resources to support that as well. We also had a community of practice, which was really nice, so that they could help problem solve for each other. They could, one, celebrate great things that were happening, or be like, hey, this happened in my classroom this week. Anyone have any ideas to share? Or here's the goal I'm working on. Does anyone have any resources or things that have really been helpful that they can share with me as well? So that's what we did. So we had those different components. They were multimodal components. They were over time, and they were able to use things very dynamically in a way and been responsive to we had 2 cohorts. Each cohort was slightly different to be responsive to the needs of that cohort. We also were able to, because it was virtual, invite experts from across the country to help provide those resources. So, what better to have the author of the book that we were using come share with us for, a couple hours on using those tools and understanding, addressing challenging behaviors with families, in addition to myself to do that as well. So that was a really value to have that as well. We did do some measurement change. We did make sure that we had some pre-tests and post-tests, and we also did we asked about their beliefs and practices long-term as well. And we really used some of our leading family-centered practices materials to do that. So just so you know, what are some of our major findings in? I'll be brief so then we can leave some time for discussion. What we found that, and not surprising, none of these were, not in general, they weren't surprising, but we did see major changes in beliefs and attitudes towards families and family practices across time. So although we all know families are really important to young children, sometimes family practices and family engagement partnership is actually really hard. It's a really kind of an advanced skill in education. And at the beginning, not everybody felt they were great at it, but by the end of the time and then over time, they really increased their confidence. Their beliefs were more positive towards families. Their attitudes were more positive, and they were using more evidence-based practices in their daily practices with children and families. So their knowledge and beliefs did definitely change and increase for the positive. So that was really great. And then we also wanted to know a little bit about this format, this kind of innovative, multimodal, long-term professional development experience, rather than kind of our one-time workshops, which are more traditional in education. And overall, we had extremely positive feedback from the individual session evaluations and the overall program. People were really enjoyed the virtual learning sessions, which were also recorded so they could go back and watch them, or if they missed them, they could go back and watch them. They really responded to the guest speakers. Being able to hear from people across the country from different experiences was really valuable. And what was most valuable was the individual coaching and action planning, which we know from research is actually the most effective way to implement practice change, but it's also the most time-consuming, the most expensive, and also really the hardest to do, because you really have to do some reflection and really think intently about your practices and really try new things that might or might not work. However, really highly valuable. We did also about the least valuable activity, and that was the virtual community of practice. We did have some sharing within the monthly learning sessions that we had together. We had some sharing across the virtual community of practices. We dug a little bit deeper into that. I will say the participants in general were skewed a little bit old, I would say over 30, and most of them said they just weren't comfortable with using technology in that way. So using different Facebook groups. We also tried Discord. We tried some other things. So that's something to look into in the future. But these 2 cohorts really didn't need it, and they felt that way. So for us moving forward, really looking at professional development, specifically with families, and I'm happy to talk more about families, supporting families with children with disabilities, to really think about maximizing and leveraging virtual professional development, but also using very strong virtual instructional skills so that the interactions are dynamic and interesting and interactive, as opposed to passive learning, just listening while you're doing other things, that it's really using really strong virtual professional development skills. And they can be effective if done correctly. We also really need to look at how to make it feasible to have multiple session experiences, and that to really, what the participants really liked, where they were able to practice what they were learning about in between the learning sessions. So they were able to learn about it, practice, come back and say how it was, ask more questions, celebrate what went well, and then learn something next to build upon those skills. So that iterative process was really, really valuable. But in professional development and education and training, we need to figure out how to do that feasibly. How do we do it time-wise? How do we do it person power-wise? And how do we do it financially to do that as well? And the last thing too, and this is again something we know, but how to do it feasibly, is that the individual coaching sessions were really made the professional development meaningful and individualized. So not only did they learn something that everybody learned all together, but then how do they take that and see it for themselves and see it with the families that they're specifically working with and the children that they're supporting in their classrooms or programs, and being able to make that connection from the general information to very specific was really valuable. But how do we do that when we're working with larger groups of teachers or professionals, or how do we do it in a way that we can support people more individually? So that's kind of in summary what we did to really support, really including and creating welcoming spaces for families of children with disabilities.
All for some very interesting research findings and inspiration for research in this particular area across all three research presentations. So we have about 10 minutes maybe for discussion. So please, anybody who has any questions, please put that in the chat. But if I can open that from each of the three, we have three presentations from any of the speakers. I'd like to start with a question about what do you think is the one thing that really surprised you from your findings? And what does that tell you, tell us about the impact of early childhood research in general? So whoever would like to go first, please go ahead and start that discussion. And we'll also watch for any questions from our audience. Does anybody want to start that?
Well, I can start.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay, so I think one thing that was very interesting in our findings was how we recognize and look at the knowledge base that teachers and staff members as a whole bring into the school community, and how impactful that is for developing school leaders, school missions, and just practices, program development in our schools. So that was a really interesting finding that we had.
Great. I'll go next. One thing that we really found, which was surprising but shouldn't have been surprising, is that once we brought professionals together, even though they were in different programs, they felt like what their experiences and issues they were having in their programs were unique. But when they started meeting with other professionals, they realized that these were common issues and needs that they needed to work on together. And once they realized that, then they could actually build a community to help feel supported and not alone, and then solving those problems or trying new practices out. So it was nice to, I wasn't happy that people felt isolated, but I was glad that we provided an opportunity where they could feel like there was a community for them to learn and grow together.
Yeah, I definitely think we have some common theme or common happy surprises here. And so one thing keep me thinking about this dismantling this intergenerational legacy, right? That's really perpetuating racism and discrimination. And in the environment that leadership, school philosophy, individual teachers, they're all working together, when their beliefs and practice can be in alignment, miracle can happen. Otherwise, we think about, a lot of teachers, a lot of research about funds of knowledge, right? Teachers' funds of knowledge and their how their counter narratives can be assets. However, in a non-supportive environment, those assets are oftentimes excluded and if not discriminated. Teachers of color, we heard again and again, they are being considered as the lower tier of the teaching force, and they are often pushed, aside. Their experiences are not embraced. So when their funds of knowledge from the individual teachers are acknowledged and embraced in the environment, then they're able to practice in their own classroom. They feel comfortable and proud to do that, but also their practice are considered as good practices that they become the models and they become the mentors for the younger teachers, for the student teachers. So this positive how to say, positive intergenerational practice can happen. So that's why we need both leadership, experienced teachers, and parents and community all work together to acknowledge that people of color, their voices, their experiences are assets that can be helpful for our children, and especially the marginalized children.
Katrina, you had shared some very emotional stories in sharing your research, which was wonderful, and it brought it alive in even more ways. And Jenna and Claire, both of you articulated your work extremely, extremely well. I was just wondering if you might have some emotional stories, that emotional connection that came out of your research that you'd like to share with us today. Either of you going first?
I could share, I think we had, this was a story that Katrina and I were talking about. We had an African-American little girl come to school, and the parent, Katrina, you may remember, the parent had told us that the other school would not allow her to wear her beads in her hair. And our teacher, when she heard this story, and this is a short story, but when she heard this, she came to school the next day and she had her hair done the same way as this little girl's. And the parent was just like overwhelmed. And the child, right away, you could see, this was a new child at the school, and right away you could see the bonding that took place. She was like, the little girl's face was just in awe. Like, I can't believe this. You wore your hair like mine. Do you remember that, Katrina?
Exactly. I remember that. And also the motivation, the motivation of this teacher doing that is she remembered her sister. First day going to school, the teacher asked their mom to say, you got to fix this child's hair. The mother asked, what do you mean by fixing? What do you mean by fixing their hair, right? And so those memories, painful, but become their pedagogical grounds for them to do this anti-racist work. So,
Jenna, can we jump back to you if you have an emotional connection story to share before we close out?
Of course. And I think too, I think all of us, our research all stems from personal experiences. So, you know, I am a parent. I'm a parent of 4 kids, and 2 of my kids have disabilities, and all of my children have actually had services through the special education system. And so the emotion that I have was that I was so happy that we had these dedicated teachers that took time. You know, this was not part of their required job requirements. They took the time out to really improve their family-centered practices so they could support other families that have children, young children and young children with disabilities. And so for me, that always brings joy to me that that's really noticed and important, and that I can have, you know, that those families are really supported, like mine, you know, that mine were supported when my children were young. So that's always really, really helpful. And I always have that personal connection to families that have children with disabilities.
Jenna, thank you for sharing that. I always am a big believer in that our research, whatever research we do, it's nice to have that emotional connection, because that's kind of what drives us besides the important implications of our findings. So thank you for sharing that. I think we are out of time. Claire, I think you were going to close us out for today. So if I can turn it back over to you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Stafford. And we just want you all to know that there are opportunities here to check out our website. Dr. Wegletz-Ward is our research coordinator for the center. And I just wanted to give one piece of advice for research, and that would be connect and ask questions. We tell everybody this. Tell us about what topics you're interested in. Tell us about the problems you want to research or issues that you have that need addressing, and how to conduct studies in natural learning, inclusive environments, and that's why we're here. So please take the time to check us out on the website. And also, I wanted to just throw this out there. We have a community presentation highlighting an innovative solution for early literacy. It's a study underway with Dr. Grubal in our college, and we are looking at teacher mindset in the study. and it's for how teacher mindset affects our instruction in literacy and science and its correlation to learning with technology. So really interesting. Check out the flyer. We'll be sending out more information. This will be in May. The 23rd, a little research presentation. Thank you all for coming.